Does one specific religion matter? Don't all religions lead to the same God? So I'm glad that this question was brought up because I do think it's an important one to focus in on. Now, the short answer to this is yes, it very much so does matter which God you worship, and not all religions are equal. So the short answer is no, what religion you have matters. But with that said, I do think it's important to recognize that there is goodness and beauty in all religions. Even in the early church, there was this recognition of this thing called the semina verbi, those seeds of the word theory. And the idea was that God does want all people to be saved. He wants all people to be brought into union with Him. And so throughout the cosmos, there is goodness, there is beauty, there is truth. And we can recognize this in the various religions that have sprung up. And so a great example might be in Hinduism, this great recognition of the beauty of the cosmos, that all things matter, that creation, or that which is, has a purpose, a reason behind it. And so for the Christian, we can say with certainty that there is goodness, that there is beauty, that there is truth in this. However, with that said, we must also point out the areas in which there is disagreement. I mean, anyone who's studied religion in a serious capacity can point out all the differences in religions that have different understandings of conceptions of who God is, which will also affect the way in which we act. And so to use somewhat of a silly example, if you worship a sort of trickster god, like you would Loki or Hermes, you would have a sort of overemphasis on this idea of wit, of subtlety, and even of deception, which would stand against the idea of Christianity that says one must be honest and truthful. Take another example from ancient times. If you worship the god of war, Ares, or Mars in the Roman idea, there will be a sort of glorification in battle. That is quite opposed to the understanding of Christianity as God being a God of peace that wishes reconciliation and union within all of His children. Or to use a more modern example with Hinduism, yes, there is beauty in all things, and yet we also don't want to get into this idea that we are all just one aspect of the divine, that the Atma, the individual person, must go into Brahma and pass through the veil of Maya. That doesn't make a lot of sense. That doesn't seem to be true. And so there must be a sort of recognition, a sort of critical evaluation of the various religions. I also think that this question needs a further refinement because it presumes that God doesn't care. It presumes that God is just outside of all of this thing, and however people choose to approach Him, that's just great and dandy. That's not the God of Christianity, for sure. That's not the God of Islam or the God of Judaism, in which God is seeking after the individual soul, that God is going for us, that He wishes to be with us and has revealed who He is to us. I mean, to use somewhat of a silly example, imagine a man going over to a woman and proposing to her, and then the woman saying, well, you know, it doesn't really matter which man I marry. They're all the same man. Like, no. God is seeking us as an individual. He has revealed who He is. Now we have an obligation to follow that, to follow where God is leading us. But I do think that this question kind of assumes that God doesn't care, when I would argue God absolutely does care. God wishes all people to be brought into union with Him. Perhaps they might not know who He is just yet. Perhaps the gospel hasn't been proclaimed to them just yet. We see this in the Acropolis as Paul goes up and proclaims the unknown God to the Athenians. But the call is to conversion. The call is to proper relationship with God. It's a call to orthodoxy, to right praise. So to summarize everything that I've just said, there is beauty in all religions. There is the seeds of the word. God wishes all people to be saved and has put forth the truth into all things. And we should recognize and respect wherever we find those truths, wherever we might find them. However, the different religions have different conceptions of who God is, and that will affect the way that we act, the way that we worship, the way that we think, the way that we approach God. And then finally, God Himself is seeking us. He wants union with us. And so if God were to come and approach us and say, this is who I am, and then we say, well, I really don't want you to be like that, that's problematic. That will be a barrier to right relationship with divine. So the religion does matter, and no, not all religions lead to the same God.